At this time, I'll call the meeting to order, Committee of Adjustments meeting. Anyone that has cell phones or devices, if you can put them on mute or vibrate, please, that would be appreciated. At the moment, I'll do an introduction of our staff that are here as well as our committee. So I'll start with our planner over there, Randy Burke. The Manager of Planning and Development Services for the County of Lambton, Ken Melanson. Corinne Nada, our Chief Building Officer, who's back in the gallery. Our planning technician, Isabella Kane, and our Director of Public Works is Adam Sabansky, and I'll introduce our committee, starting to my right, Jennifer Turk, who is a member of our committee, Deputy Mayor Nettie McEwen, also a member, and Les Goldhawk, a committee member, and I am Bruce Moulton, and I am the chair of the committee. So we will start. I have a motion here from Nettie McEwen, seconded by Les Goldhawk, that the minutes of the regular Committee of Adjustments meeting held June 13th, 2023 be approved as presented. Any questions? All those in favor? And that is carried. We will move to our first application. Take notice that we have a minor variance application number A-0722. Take notice that an application has been made by Barbara and James Stewart with respect to the property known as 3548 Queen Street, Plan 2, Lot 23, Part Lot 24, Front Street, and Part Lot 3 and 4, James Street, Town of Plympton-Wyoming. The subject property is zoned Environmental Protection, Lakeshore EPL. Single detached dwellings in Environmental Protection, Lakeshore Zone, are a permitted use. The following variance has been requested for a proposed single detached dwelling. A variance of 129.09 meters square, 1,388.5 square feet, as the proposed gross floor area of the dwelling is 416.092 meters squared, 4,478.7 square feet, notwithstanding the maximum permitted gross floor area of 287 meters squared, 3,089.2 square feet as per subsection 30.4H and Table B of the zoning bylaw. At this point in time, I will ask our planner, Randy Burke, give us her summary.
Thank you, your chair. So this application was submitted back in September of 2022. The committee deferred that application until a coastal engineer assessment could be completed, in which this case, the coastal engineer assessment has been submitted, and staff has received that and reviewed it, as well as the St. Clair Conservation Authority received it as well. So when we have a minor variance application, there are the 4 tests as per the Planning Act, starting with, is the requested variance minor? The subject property is located within the high erosion area along Lakeshore, which does involve more frequent flooding and erosion hazards. And as well, this is a minor variance of 44.97% over the gross layer area that is permitted in the zoning bylaw. Therefore, it's staff's opinion that the requested variance is not minor. The second question is the general intent and purpose of the official plan maintained? So the subject property is designated Lakeshore in the official plan, which the goal is to minimize exposing landowners to unstable conditions such as erosion and flooding as well. It also intends, the official plan also intends to minimize investment and habitable space exposed to hazards. The proposed development is located within the town's 60 and 100-year urban hazards. Plus the gross floor area, the variance pushes the development beyond kind of what is considered for housing, and the coastal engineering report did find only a design life of 25 years. So therefore, the general intent of the official plan is not maintained. The third question is the general intent of the zoning bylaw maintained. As mentioned, the property is zoned environmental protection lakeshore. In the EPL zone, a single detached dwelling is permitted as well as an attached accessory structure. However, due to the sensitive nature of Lake Huron, the zoning bylaw does have special definitions and more strict zoning regulations. So again, as stated, it is located in the 60 and 100-year setback, which is the secondary hazard area of the zoning bylaw. So increasing the gross floor area doesn't necessarily maintain the intent, and will provide more habitable space within that secondary hazard area, therefore not maintaining the intent of the zoning bylaw. And finally, is the minor variance desirable and appropriate for the subject land? Overall, no, it is staff's opinion that it is not desirable, although it is a permitted use through the official plan and zoning bylaw, due to the sensitive nature of Lake Huron and the high erosion area. The proposed development and increased gross floor area is just not suitable for the subject property. Based on my overview of those four tests, planning staff cannot support the approval of this minor variance application, and if committee were to do so, there are a number of approval conditions there as well.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Stewart. Welcome back. You certainly have the opportunity. You heard the other report from our planner. Go ahead, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moulton and committee members. We appreciate the opportunity to come back and discuss this. I think when we were here in September, we were left with the understanding that we needed to get the coastal survey done, or sort of report done. We've asked our engineer, Michael Sturm from Shore Plan to be here, so he's with us on through Zoom. So he's here as a resource. If there's any questions, our concern was if you have questions around the technical piece, we probably can't answer it, but he can be here to do that. So at any point, I might ask Mr. Sturm to give us some enlighten us on some points. I think when we left here last September, like I said, we were under the understanding that we were going to be getting the coastal study done, and as long as the Conservation Authority was an approval of that and found it positive, that's what the committee at the time left us. That's the message we were left with. Is the committee would be fine as long as Conservation Authority was okay with the coastal assessment. That assessment was done. Conservation Authority has no problems with it. You've seen that in their report. And my understanding is they're the provincial keepers of our conservation. So they'll have that. They have that technical background to make those decisions. So we were under the understanding. So when we saw the report, we were confused by all the no to all four questions. One of the concerns or one of the confusing points we had was we don't know what a minor variance is versus not a minor variance. It seems to be like we're shooting in the dark. What is considered minor? What is considered major? That's something we don't know. So we've submitted the same plans because at the time that seemed to be in our discussions not the problem. The problem was, can the land withstand the house that we want to put on it. So that's where we are now.
Yeah, so just to add to that, so before we bought the lot, we did our due diligence. There was a new build in 2018 next door. So it was a larger lot that was split. I don't know if you're aware or not. And we have this larger portion by about 30 feet, 35 feet in width. same depth basically. And so we just looked at their house and we thought, this is beautiful. This is kind of what we were looking for, the style that we want. And an attached garage, you know, and so we actually asked the owners, the people who built it, so not the people that live there now, but the original owners, if they had any issues, and they applied for their minor variance for their square footage, and they said they got approved with no issue. So we didn't think that would be an issue with the size. And then the last meeting, we talked a lot about the coastal engineering portion of it, but no one really brought up an issue about the size to us. So we were surprised that that was the focus of this planning report, and that again, with the Conservation Authority being okay with what we've said, or what the engineering report said, that is now an issue, is with the size. We're just a little confused, because we did what we were asked, and the impression that we were left with from the committee was, because I don't know if you remember, but we almost had a conditional approval. It was brought forth that maybe a conditional approval would be done, and then the plan at the time said, no, we should get the survey done first, or the report done first by the engineer. And so that was deferred completely, so and that's fine. And we were happy to do that. I think we've satisfied that requirement, and then we're hoping that the township will see that we want to just build a house, nothing crazy. Especially for the size of the lot, we're underneath the percentage of what the house is supposed to be on the lot size. We're quite a bit underneath that. It's just the square footage, that is over what we're allowed.
I think also it should be mentioned that the house directly to the west of us that was built in 2018 is 4,888 square feet, which is about 400 more than we want.
You know, we have a large lot.
And our lot is larger. And that kind of lends itself to the third question too, about putting something that size in that space. Is it going to affect the erosion? And according to our engineer, and maybe he can speak to this, it doesn't matter if you have 1,000 square foot home or if you have a 5,000 square foot home. If the land's eroding, it's eroding. So there's that piece as well. I don't know, Mr. Sturm, if I've captured that point right or not.
And also we were suggested by the Conservation Authority to put in some shoreline protection to help with our application, basically to say that, you know, we're slowing things down. And so at our own cost, obviously, we did put in a coastal engineered seawall with tiebacks and all that other stuff, all that technical stuff that I'm not sure of. But, you know, we were sure that that was the right step to try and help us with our application. So that's what we did.
Yeah. So.
Great, thank you. I'm not sure if we can have Mr. Sturm on at all, if he wants to just does he have the opportunity to speak?
Muted at the moment. There he goes.
Mr. Sturm, I think you've heard what Mr. Jackson has said. Sorry, Mr. Stewart.
Mr. Jackson.
I don't know. Sorry, Mr. Stewart had said, do you have anything to add to that?
I think what I would like to stress is that the property does have shore protection. I did assign it a 25-year life, but I think you will note on the plan that the layout of the property allows for maintenance access. There's a 5-meter access, I think, on the west side, which then allows the protection to be maintained and upgraded if needed in the future. So the maintenance of the protection works and the extension of any design life that I've estimated for the structure can be provided. I think that's a very positive feature as well. So overall, we prepared a report that I think is acceptable to the Conservation Authority, and the Conservation Authority, in my view, is sort of the provincial guardian of the shoreline hazards. And I think if they have accepted the report and believe the development can proceed, then I think that carries some weight. I can certainly answer specific questions about my report, but overall, I think the proposed development does not create any new hazards. It is in line with adjacent development impact behind it. And I would also suggest that having development and having the protection on this property is beneficial to the adjacent properties, because having a property with no development, with nobody looking after it, in fact, can create a hazard for the adjacent properties. So those are the things I think to consider. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. At this time, I will go to our committee for the questions. I'm going to start with Deputy Mayor McEwen, since she was here back in September, as I was as well. And I'll let you go ahead, Nettie.
I was here, but I thought we discussed the size of the building.
It was, but it was
For the garage.
for the
Did we
garage.
not, did we not suggest maybe downsizing that building?
So there was no direction as to what to do. The discussion was more about what attached versus detached. So if it was detached, it wasn't an issue. But then we got kind of sidetracked with the whole coastal engineering survey. So nothing was said about the end about what the target was, if anything, for the downsizing.
So, but it wasn't suggested that you would downsize.
No, it wasn't at the time that.
It wasn't at all.
No, it was just talking about the detached versus attached garage.
That's all I have right now. I'll fix something else. Don't worry.
Okay, Les?
One question that I had is this break wall that you said put in. When was that put in?
2021. Yeah.
21, yeah.
And so my question to planning, does that break wall change that 60-year or 100-year line?
No, it wouldn't change the line that we have in our zoning bylaw. I, however, I do not know about the break wall, and had not been informed about it.
It's on the survey.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, my understanding in terms of the Conservation Authority's review of the study is that it didn't change anything materially. If there was a change to where the line should be, the Conservation Authority would let us know, because that they do not control where that line is delineated. They provide that information to us. And then we bring that to you, to council, then amends the bylaw or changes the bylaw appropriately. They haven't given us any indication that the line needs to move.
I didn't see any change in it, and I didn't know whether or not that is a 25-year life of break wall, whether that offset any of that erosion of the 60-year or 100-year.
I think actually Mr. Sturm can probably answer that question for you.
Mr. Sturm, did you hear the question from Mr. Goldhawk?
Yes, I did. And what I can add is this. The lines that I think the municipality is using are hazard lines that the shoreline management plan of the Conservation Authority has prepared. Those lines are developed on what I refer to as regional basis. They look at larger pieces of shoreline and assign erosion rates. The Conservation Authority review process allows site-specific studies, which is what we completed. It's a site-specific study. And on the basis of those studies, they allow encroachment into the lines that the shoreline management plan develops. And in our study, that line is called a development line. And that is the line that we proposed based on the erosion rate and the presence of the shore protection works. And that is what was accepted by the Conservation Authority. So we are within the original hazard lines outlined in the shoreline management plan, which I think are reflected in your bylaws. But the site-specific study allows encroachment into that hazard. So that's the reason for doing the study. And essentially what you have is the 60-year erosion line plus the 25-year design life. So you have 85 years of, call it protection or stability, plus the stable slope allowance. And the 15-year encroachment into that overall regional study can be allowed on the basis of that site-specific assessment.
Thank you.
I hope that clarifies that.
Les, does that help?
It does, like, because that was my other question that I had here was, just wanting to, find out about that development setback and, consideration on the drawing, so.
Any more questions?
Um. No, not at this time.
Jennifer?
So I pulled up the planning report from September 6, 2022, and the variance at that time for the gross floor area was 49.3%. And right now in this report, you're asking for 44.97.
Oh, yeah, we did downside a little bit. Yeah, we did downsize, but not like specifically with the garage.
Deputy Mayor McEwen was asking, so there's been a decrease. But based on what the planners have submitted in the planning report, I agree with it. All 4 tests have, with the zoning bylaw, none of it meets. So I can't approve something that doesn't meet the 4 tests that's in the planning report that's reflective of what's required in the section in the Planning Act.
Nettie, do you want me to go or do you
Oh,
want?
no, you go.
So, I remember, obviously, I was here, not in the chair, but I was, Nettie, just for clarification, if I do recall the meeting that we had. We did somewhat discuss the size, and I think what was mentioned was that the garage was the thing that was putting it over the limit, right? And there was conversation about having a detached garage and not, and then I believe one of the other members just kind of mentioned that, I mean, as long as it was still in that zone and it was back beyond that zone, there wasn't an issue. I think that's probably how you guys were feeling from that, is that it, I mean, it was all part of the zone. Or in the, you know,
It was beyond the-
the line,
yeah.
line that was there.
Yeah.
And and that's probably how you left the meeting, thinking that that was probably fine because of that. I know the main discussion was about having the engineers come over and check it out to make sure, I mean, once again, we didn't want to be in a position to okay something that would be not in a good spot. And that's how I recall it. Nettie, is basically, we did have discussion, and I think what was mentioned, and I'm not sure if it was mentioned by you or maybe I think it was by the planner back then. I mean, once again, the garage was the main part of the size. And at that time, I think that there was even a question whether or not, you know, the garage should be calculated into the full square footage of the house. What was kind of mentioned at the meeting then. So that's just clarification for the other 2 that weren't here, and for Nettie, what I recall from.
Yeah, I think that was because we had the entire garage structure was in front of the 100-year line.
Yes,
Then I think, and then I apologize. Yeah, so I do remember now that you're mentioning that.
yeah.
That was interesting, yeah.
So the decrease, is that just patio space and stuff? Was that how the decrease has happened?
I think just in our own, with working with our designer, we just had, you know, we've been tweaking things and we've taken some.
Like decreased bedroom sizes and living room
Yeah.
and kitchen, like just taking a few things here and there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Speaking to that piece about the garage, that was, I don't know if you remember, we were given instruction prior to the meeting from a previous planner before the last one that told us that the garage did not count in the VFA.
Right. I
Oh.
remember that.
That was that confusion. So we thought we were coming in, you know, with our house under the amount, the 287. So.
or right at it. yes.
Right at it was
Yeah, right at it,
close.
yeah.
So that was where that confusion was, and then there's another thing since then. So I think now, you know, I'm hearing you can't approve anything. So the answer, no, we don't know where to go though. We don't know what the minor variance number is. Is it 30%? Is it 40?
There's no number.
So we don't know. We feel like we're shooting in the dark. We have to go back and figure out what to do and come back and go through this again. And then it's a delay of another, you know, 3 months or 4 months or whatever it might be. So
And then in the recommendations, there's something about a geotechnical survey that we've never heard of before. So that was another thing that we're wondering what was going on. And then, you know, if ours is too big, we don't understand why the one next to us was allowed to be built without any issue. That's even bigger for a smaller lot. So I don't understand where the difference is.
Yeah, and like I said, it'll be a vote here for however it goes. I'm not sure. So just to answer the question for a geotechnical survey, I guess, is that really, that's part of the in the report.
Maybe I got the terminology wrong. Sorry, I'm not.
No, it's a
It was one of the
it's a
recommendations.
recommendation in,
Yeah.
in the report, but it's a geotechnical report which should be submitted with when at building permit time.
Right.
Just to prove that it's meeting all these lines.
Right.
So, and that's
So
what needs to be.
So what is, can someone clarify that for me? Like, what is a geotechnical report? Because we were hearing that maybe we need to do coring samples, or like there was one done a few properties over or something. Like, I don't know what it entails.
Sort of like a survey that proves that
Boreholes.
it is boreholes.
Boreholes in the core.
I like.
My phone keeps spinning.
That's the engineer.
Would you like to explain what a,
Yes, if I can, Mr. Chair, if I can provide some comments on that. Typically, geotechnical reports are done to assess the stable slope of the property along the waterfront. What we have used and what the Conservation Authority accepted was a borehole done and a report done on a property roughly 100 meters away, where there was a deep borehole done and the stable slope assessed, and we have used that stable slope within the calculations that we have. The erosion setback is not just erosion, it also allows for stable slope allowance with all the appropriate factors of safety. So the Conservation Authority is satisfied that the geotechnical information that is required for assessment of the setback has been provided, and that is in our report. So in terms of stable slope assessment, the Conservation Authority is satisfied that no further geotechnical work is required.
thank you very much.
So I was wrong. I thought it was just a survey.
Mr. Chair.
Prove it
Yeah,
does.
sorry, go ahead, Corinne.
There's a couple of terms that are being interchangeably used here. Geotechnical survey is what Milo just talked about is part of the Conservation Authority. So if that's already satisfied, then it's more or less, it may be a condition on there, but they were letting you know last time as part of the conditions that it is required.
It
sounds like-
it wasn't mentioned at all last time. It's on this new report, so I
And I
didn't.
think they want to make sure that you were aware in case it hadn't been done with the Conservation Authority. Now there's another, the other requirement is just a general survey. Right? A survey showing where the house is going to be constructed in accordance with your lines, which I understand you've already completed.
Yeah, we already did that, yeah.
Right? Then there's a foundation survey, which is required after it's poured, and then your final grading plan at final occupancy. So it's just, it's a survey, but it
Okay.
entails many things.
So they're just, okay,
They're just clarifying what's gonna be required to. obtain.
gotcha, okay.
So if this were granted, would we leave that in as a condition? Like it's done anyway.
So through.
Go ahead,
through the
Ken.
chair, there's no impact if you leave it in. Because if it's already been done and satisfied by the Conservation Authority, as their consultant is indicating, then we already have confirmation from the Conservation Authority that's done, that the condition would simply be satisfied. I wanted to clarify something earlier. The previous report that was done back in 2021 or 22 was not able to complete the assessment of the application because we were missing this information. So keep in mind, committee, the EPL zone is a different animal in terms of other zones in the bylaw. To the extent that under normal circumstances, there's a whole bunch of definitions that apply in all other zones, but this one suddenly says, oh, those definitions, no, don't apply those. Apply these special situations. It creates its own definitions for things like lot coverage and what have you. And so when Maria provided the report to committee previously, the assessment wasn't completed. So some of the conditions that you're seeing, if committee were of the mind to approve this, were not there because the assessment was not complete because we were missing information.
So if this were granted now, they would have to go through more technical reports.
So through you.
What you're saying?
No, so through you, Mr. Chairman, what I'm saying in terms of proposed condition 5. Is if what their consultant is saying is correct, that the Conservation Authority is satisfied, you can keep the condition in. And it would simply be considered satisfied because the Conservation Authority would confirm that. If it's not, then they would have to submit that.
But you confused me when you were talking about the assessment wasn't complete, that was the last report.
And so if you remember, when this item was before you at the last committee, it was recommended to be deferred because we needed more information. That's all that I was referring to.
So now all the information is here.
Correct.
Correct. And it's recommended that the planner cannot support this application, but if it is approved, there's all these conditions.
Correct.
Well, okay. No, I'm just gonna say that many years ago, I just want to explain what my thinking is. Many years ago, we had a variance for another application. It was much more hazardous land than what this particular one is. And it went to the OMB at that time, and that chair said that you can't stagnate a piece of property that is buildable. So, and that's how I feel about this one. I do wish that you could just downsize it a little, like 44%. I know you've done 5% less, but it's still, in my opinion, it isn't that minor. It could be considered minor. It's less than half. So I'll just sit here and mull it over a little longer while you guys talk some more if you want.
I don't know how much more there is to talk about.
I guess my dilemma is that the St. Clair Conservation Authority proving they feel is acceptable for the erosion area. Our planning has got different rules.
If I can, Mr. Chairman, there's two issues here. There's the coastal erosion issue, which the consultant has spoken to, and I think frankly, the commentary that was provided to explain that and the process the Conservation Authority uses is quite good. I'm not gonna add to it. But that's one piece of the puzzle. The next piece of the puzzle is the zoning bylaw itself. And the zoning bylaw, like every other zone in your bylaw, sets out your minimum setbacks, your maximum lot coverage, building size, height. It creates a box. And that's where your house or whatever it is you're constructing needs to fit. So regardless of whether an engineer comes back and suggests that it's safe or that it's appropriate or that it can be engineered, it still has to fit the box. And the bylaw defines what that box is in terms of the size. So in this case, you have an engineer who has come back, been asked to assess this, done what the Conservation Authority has requested, and the Conservation Authority is saying, okay, fine. You still have the second piece, which is it still doesn't fit the box.
Oh, just to add one further question then. You don't have any qualms with what has been put in this document, this diagram, to show that it's within the 60 to 100 year term. But there's also a 25-year design line that adds to that 60-year area. But my understanding, that would give 85 years at that point.
That's not the issue that is the challenge in terms of assessing the tests. It purely comes down to the bylaw sets a box. You've started out on paper outside of the box and you're asking for something. This goes back to the fundamental question of what is a minor variance. I'll give you an example of what could be considered a minor variance and what couldn't be. Randy owns a house. She decides that she wants to build an additional dwelling unit in the basement. She lives in a city. The requirement is that she has to provide one parking stall. She comes to the city and says, you are in a housing crisis. I don't have the room for a parking stall. I would like a variance of that parking stall. On paper and mathematically, that is 100% variance. You're asking to vary the one stall. It's 100%. So numerically, it's quite significant. But yet she lives next to a subway station. She lives in a transit-oriented area. From a planning perspective, it's not it is a minor variance because there's policy that may say, well, if you live in that transit area, do you really need parking? We want to emphasize people to use the train or to walk or what have you. That's a situation that can go either way. When we get into looking at these minor variances, we're looking at what is the planning impact? What is the impact of something that's being asked for? Now, did they bring the number down? Yes, absolutely. It's on the floor. We've talked about that. But the fact is, you're still starting at a point where you're outside of the box. And it gets down to what is the intent of the zone, which is to limit the impact of hazard areas to landowners. And is allowing such a large variance, is that really a minor variance? And that's really the question that's before you, committee, which is why we put conditions of approval here for you as well. If you don't agree with us, you have the ability to move forward and make a decision in the positive. But our position remains as presented.
So either way, I'd like to get it on the floor. So either way in the positive, I like to always do the positive, and whether it can pass or be declined, it doesn't matter. So if we could get it on the floor, it would be good. Just for our committee, just signing that we're for it doesn't necessarily mean that, or not for it, signing the motion doesn't mean that we're for it. We're just basically getting it on the floor for a vote. So I have a motion here. So I've got a motion by Nettie McEwen, seconded by Les Goldhawk, that minor variance A-07-22 be granted, subject to the following conditions. And the conditions are: 1, that the certified lot grading plan be submitted to the town of Plympton-Wyoming and approved by the town prior to permit issuance. That the applicant apply for SCRCA permit at owner's sole expense prior to any development taking place. That a final grading plan certificate be submitted to the town of Plympton-Wyoming upon final completion and the subject to the town's final approval. That the applicant apply for a building permit and comply with all requirements as prescribed by the Ontario Building Code and to the satisfaction of the County of Lambton Building Services Department. That a geotechnical report be submitted with any further applications, building permits, etc., to ensure development meets the requirements of all departments. That eaves, troughs, downspouts, and grading is maintained accordingly and within owned property boundaries, no exceptions, and that drainage waters are not diverted to neighboring properties. That the property is generally maintained and drained during the construction process, and that the drainage waters are not diverted to neighboring properties, and that weeds and grass are always maintained within 20 centimeters, 8 inches or less, and that the dwelling must be constructed in the location shown on the site plan prepared by Lucas Design Group Incorporated, dated May 30th, 2023. So at this time, I'll call the question. All those in favor? I guess that's carried.
Can I ask 2 clarification questions?
Absolutely.
So the geotechnical report that for condition number 5.
Yeah.
Does not include coring, like it's just what we discussed today, right? So that's.
Yeah, so the
seems like
building-
it's
When
satisfied.
you bring in your to go see building services, they'll explain to you exactly what you need to be able to move forward for that.
Do we have a garbage can for our banana peel? This is very important right now.
So,
Um,
once again, there's a 20-day appeal period. The appeals can either be from us or from you. No third party appeals. So it is a 20-day appeal period. After that, you can get a hold of, or during that, you can get a hold of Isabella. And she'll direct you to what you need to do as far as anything prior to or but no construction can be started.
Okay, which is fine.
Any other questions?
One more question.
Yeah.
So just to be clarified, so this has been granted approval with this, like the plans that we've given you?
Yeah.
And that's, okay, that's fine. So just when we go for the permit, it'll be more about not size or anything, it'll just be about the actual structure and
Absolutely.
engineering and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Grading plan and-
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Go ahead, Corinne.
It is about size. The plans clearly have to be exactly as.
Okay.
It can't be any bigger than what you have.
No, no, yeah.
No, no,
Absolutely.
I understand that.
Could we be, I know sounds, could we be a little bit smaller, like, or does it'll have to be exactly the same? Just wondering.
Depends how committee works it in their decision.
Yeah, I don't think that we have a size here. We have the only variance that we've given you is the variance of the size that it is that you've asked for. We can't go, you can go obviously smaller.
Okay, that's my question. Okay.
Just no bigger than what we.
Because we haven't priced things out yet, so if it finds out like the garage is what we want, but it's gonna be ridiculous, then we might make it smaller. Okay, that's fine.
Mr. Chairman, I refer you to the last one. It relates to the site.
Okay, sorry. So yes, shown on the site plan. So
That is your.
Oh, okay.
my
absolute-
apologies. I.
Oh, yeah, no, I would never go bigger. That's fine.
Yeah.
But smaller is, okay, can we just have that put in the minutes that smaller is possible?
That's what that.
No, that's it, okay. That's fine.
All
I sort of might have to come back to do another. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank
you.
Thank you, Mr. Sturm. I think he's still, thank you, Milo.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on here. We will go to, sorry, my papers are a little wet from coming in. Severance application number 8, or sorry, B909, 23. Take notice, an application has been made by Mike Gibson with respect to the property known as 7665 Sunset Drive, Plan 448. Part lots 74 and 75, RP 25R4645, parts 2 and 3, irregular town of Plympton-Wyoming. I'm sorry. The applicant is seeking consent for one lot line adjustment to convey approximately 682 square meters, 7,341.2 square feet from the above noted property to the abutting property 7661 Sunset Drive. The retained parcel 7665 Sunset Drive will be approximately 1,800 square meters. Both properties are zoned residential 5R5 as per zoning bylaw 97 of 2003. At this time, I'll ask our planner, Randy Burke, to give us her summary.
Thank
We have Mr. Or is that Mrs. Gibson on?
Yep, hello, hi.
So thank you, your chair. So through you, the applicant actually submitted a severance for these same subject lands back in 2021. At the time of submission, as mentioned in the report, there was 2 conversions kind of presented to staff, and the applicant chose to go forward with, at the time it was an L-shaped conversion, and the straight line one kind of in front of us today. Mr. Gibson wanted to go with this straight line conversion, and he was instructed by staff to let the previous conditions lapse and then move forward with a new severance application, which is what's here for today. The applicant had advised staff that the severance is just to facilitate more landscape and open space area on 7661, which will be receiving the land for gardening, and that no new structures are to be built due to this severance. When we do discuss severance application, you go through different legislative policies throughout the province, including the provincial policy statement and the County of Lambton official plan. I will just discuss the town of Plympton-Wyoming and kind of what's in the report official plan. So the lands are designated service hamlet area, and within these areas, it does permit low density residential and open space. So therefore it is in conformity with the official plan, and it's not intended to have any adverse effects on the neighbors. Thus, no new structures are being proposed. And as well, in terms of the town of Plympton-Wyoming zoning bylaw, all lots will conform to the policy set out in regulations. So there is not intended to be any adverse effects on that, and they're zoned for a single detached structure as they are residential R5 with both plots currently maintained and are intended to maintain to the severance. Overall, planning staff supports the approval of the application with the conditions outlined in the report.
Great, thank you very much. Mrs. Gibson, anything to add to Mrs. Bork's report?
No, that's very accurate.
Welcome back.
Yeah, thanks.
At this time, I will go to our committee and I'll start with Jennifer Turk. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Thanks. I don't have any questions outside of the planner's report. I agree with it, so I don't have a problem approving this one.
Les?
The only question that I had, and I'm making an assumption here that the wood shed at the back of the lot, or the property that's going to be moved over to the other one.
That shed has been 3-year chair, sorry. That shed has been removed.
There's a shed right at the back of the lot.
Oh,
Great, sorry, Mr. Chair, through you. You're referring to this tiny little one in the red area on the,
It's just a wood shed, like a wooden built shed. And so that would be conveyed with the lot. I mean, without it having to come down or anything like that. That's my question.
I think Ms. Gibson would have to answer that.
Ms. Gibson, any the question here is about that little small shed that's in the back there. That would that be conveyed with the severance as well? Or what's going to happen with that little shed?
It's a tear down. There's not much to it, just plywood, boards holding it up. And we have a little shed on our property now, so we don't need that one.
There wasn't any drastic thing. I don't have any problem with it.
Didn't know the answer.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it's just a small, poorly built shelter.
Poorly built. Please tell me that that your husband didn't build that for you.
No, that was the previous owners when we had acquired the place. Like, it's definitely come in handy, but it's an eyesore.
Nettie?
Yeah, so what happened with the original severance? It just lapsed? Is that what happened? Did you just forget about it, or?
No, we just decided that wasn't the plan we wanted to go with. Like, looking ahead, if we decide to sell that property or whatever, it would just make more sense for it to be a straight line.
Right, okay. No more
Just,
questions.
thank you.
Sorry, Isabella, the last application, I forgot to ask if there's any other outstanding correspondence, and I knew that we had correspondence from the last one, just from the planning authorities or the St. Clair authority and whatnot, but were there any other correspondence for this application?
no other correspondence.
Okay.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to add to Deputy Mayor McEwen's question. Up until recent Planning Act changes, the only way for a severance to, the only way for us to have done a new severance would have been to allow the severance to just simply naturally lapse. There has been a change to the Planning Act. You can now make an application to cancel a severance. So that is a recent change.
Okay, thank you.
Just FYI.
So I have a motion here, moved by Nettie McEwen, seconded by Les Goldhawk, that consent B-0223 be granted subject to the following conditions. One, that a drainage assessment on the severed parcel be reapportioned accordingly and the agreement signed by the respective property owners and provided by the town, if the parties cannot mutually agree to the apportionment, or if the town does not approve, applicant shall pay the engineering fees incurred by the engineer selected by the town. The fees will be paid prior to the stamping of the deeds. Number 2, that a copy of the deed and survey must be submitted to the secretary treasurer in a form suitable for registration. Number 3, that such additional severance fees be required by the town have been paid before the documents will be endorsed. Number 4, that the conditions be met and the survey and deed be presented within 2 years from the date of the decision of, or the consent will lapse. Number 5, that a new grading certificates be required to demonstrate compliance and that site servicing continues to be on the correct lot. Number 6, that the applicant obtain a minor variance for a setback due to a water course as noted by Town Public Works. That number 7, that the severed lands be merged on title through section 50 brackets 3 of the Planning Act, and that the hazard lands be rezoned or registered on title to prohibit any future developments. For example, no garden, wool sheds, any of that such. Sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, are you doing the right conditions?
Thought I was.
think That's for the next one.
You too, yeah.
You guys didn't stop me?
I didn't realize it until you started talking about hazard lands.
Okay. My apologies, committee. Sorry, I was just going by the order. 03.
Was where I started.
That's the one I did.
Round 4.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, okay, yeah, sorry. Okay, can I start that again? My apologies. You guys should have stopped me before I started getting into whatever
Wasn't listening.
You were on a roll.
the committee that I have here. My apologies. I'll start that again. I have a motion here by Les Goldhawk, seconded by Jennifer Turk, that consent B0923 be granted subject to the following conditions. 1, that the severed lands be conveyed to the budding property 7661 Sunset Drive and be merged on title through section 50 brackets 3 of the Planning Act. That the drainage assessment on the severed parcel be reapportioned according to the agreement signed by the respective property owners and provided by the town. If the parties cannot mutually agree, the apportionment, or if the town does not approve, the applicant shall pay the engineering fees incurred by the engineer selected by the town. The fees will be paid prior to the stamping of the deeds. Number 3, that a copy of the deed and survey be submitted to the secretary treasurer. Geez, I thought I was reading the wrong one again, Betty. In a form suitable for registration. Number 4, that such additional severance fees be, or as required by the town, have been paid before the documents will be endorsed. Number 5, that the conditions must be met and the survey and deed be presented within 2 years from the date of the decision or the consent will lapse. Number 6, that a new grading certificates be required to demonstrate compliance, that site servicing continues to be on the correct lot, and that there is confirmation of the location of the infrastructure on each lot to ensure that no infrastructure crosses lot boundaries. And in the case that they do, that they either be replaced or easements entered into to allow for the continued crossing. Any easements returned to the Committee of Adjustments for approval. At this moment, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. As you've heard, there's a 20-day appeal period. You can be in contact with Isabella, and she will let you know when your 20 days are up. And if you have any questions, you can certainly go through her. Any questions?
Nope, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Sorry, committee, we're just going in order here. So we'll move forward, and if I can have the committees okay, I would like to read them all, and we will look after them individually. I will have to vote on them individually when it comes to the severances. Is that okay with the committee? All right, severance application. B0223 to B0423 and B0723. Take notice that an application has been made by 1272164 Ontario Incorporated, care of Carl Congdon, with respect to the property known as 0 Fleming Road, Plympton, Plympton Concession Park Lot 18R Plan 25R-8063 Part 2, Part 1, Town of Plympton-Wyoming. The applicant is asking for consent for 4 lot line adjustments to rectify encroachment matters. The one, 223.6 meters squared, 0.8 square feet to be conveyed to 6880 Elizabeth Way. The next one, 1,146.8 meters squared, 12,344.1 square feet to be conveyed to 6862 Creekside Drive. And the next one, 702.2 meters squared, 7,558.4 square feet to be conveyed to 6864 Creekside Drive. And lastly, 841.5 meters squared, 9,057.8 square feet to be conveyed to 6866 Creekside Drive. At this time, I will ask our planner to give her summary.
Thank you, your chair. Through you, the application was presented to the committee in April. Then the committee suggested that the application go to council as the reconveyance of the lands to the town was a town council item. However, at that council meeting, council suggested that the applicant revise the application to make the retained lands just retained and not transferred to the town, so we can move forward with the lot line adjustment. Again, when a severance application comes through, a discussion regarding legislation in terms of the provincial policy statement and the county official plan are within the report. The town of Plympton-Wyoming official plan designate the area service hamlet area in which residential uses are permitted. All 4 of these lands contain residential detached dwellings, and that a land severance may be permitted in accordance with the policies of the plan for residential development. In this case, the lot line adjustments are not, no one is proposing new structures, so there's no adverse effects intended to be in play. Therefore, the application is consistent with the town official plan policies. In the town zoning bylaw, the properties are zoned R5 with a hazard overlay. And all the properties are intended to meet the regulations and setbacks that are outlined in the zoning bylaw, thus complying with the zoning bylaw. Overall, planning supports the approval of the application with the proposed conditions that have been read.
Thank you. Hello, Carl. Anything to add to what our planner has said?
She's awesome.
Nettie, I'm going to go to you first because obviously this came to council. I'm not sure if you have anything to add or you would like to speak on what was decided.
The B02, 03, 04, and 07, they're pretty straightforward and they're exactly the same as they came to us the last meeting. So they're just lot line adjustments. And then the remainder is going to stay together. Am I correct?
At this meeting, yes.
Yeah, you referred to another meeting. I'm not correct. Hey, listen, Don't be making faces at me when there are other people applying for something because they thought I was making fun of them and it was you. So stop.
You're making fun of him? you mean?
Stop. Anyway, so. Yeah, I don't have any problems for severances that are lot line adjustments.
Okay, Jennifer?
I don't have any issues with the lot line adjustments either.
Les?
I don't either. I just had one question in regards to six, eight, six, I think it is, or 6864 Creekside. It's either going up for sale or is for sale. Is that gonna change anything?
It's up for sale and it won't change anything. Their fence actually is one side of their yard is 16 feet into our property. But we didn't know what to do with his property anyways, and people have enjoyed it as personal space, so. Just to make it legal for sale, to clear up any legalities or encumbrances. Wanted those severances, those lot line adjustments, just to satisfy things. And then
Okay, so committee, what I'm gonna do, all of the conditions are what I've read here, exactly the same for each. So, and I'm correct, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the first one with all conditions and then I'll go through them individually, if that's okay with her.
There is one condition there that.
I couldn't see anything different.
One of those.
Yeah, here.
And it says that something about a minor variance, or was that in another?
There was,
Yeah, that the applicant obtained a minor variance for a setback to a water course as noted by town public works, but. In case of a building building application, is that it? Because I don't know what other reason they need a minor variance for.
looks like Adam,
If the applicant chooses to build on the retained lands,
Oh, yeah,
as was shown in the previous application. If they choose to have a walkout basement as initially proposed, they would need that minor variance. And they would have to obtain consent from this committee for the water lines running through the existing properties to establish a permanent easement over those properties.
and so the condition that Nettie had read, does that convey what you just said, Adam?
Should be, I'd have to, what page are we on?
It's 5 of 13 for the PDF. If I might suggest.
Yeah.
Just some small wordsmithing now that I know a bit more of the. What we could change that condition to be is that the applicant obtain a minor variance for a setback to a water course. Should the walkout basement, that was for a dwelling, so is that right, Adam?
The initially proposed dwelling, yes,
don't-
had a walkout
I
basement.
don't think that we need,
but that's for the other application, isn't it?
Well, keep in mind, we have presented this as all of these combined, so we only presented one set of conditions for all of them. So, in essence, whichever consent that is.
There is no consent on this one. It's basically, it's retained land.
Yes.
So it's not, it really doesn't have anything to do with these four.
I guess,
There's four of them that.
yeah, so I guess, Mr. Chairman, you could take the condition out. It's been advised to the applicant that he would need to obtain that minor variance if he does construct on the retained lands. I don't think.
well, before I take anything out, I'll have to talk to my motioner and seconder to see whether or not they're okay with that, so
But won't they need a variance for a shed or anything else too?
Under the hazard lands, yeah, and there may be,
So I was just going to add, if a building permit is required.
that would work too.
Okay, can I add that to all these four motions? Okay,
Carl, did you have something?
I think when we had the Conservation Authority come and do a walkthrough, one of their concerns was that lot 12, 13, and 14 there'd be access to the creek in case they had to bring equipment in to do any maintenance of that creek. So something to address that. So if somebody thought they were going to put a fence all the way down to their lot line at the creek, that would not allow access.
Yeah, and what's being put here would not allow that.
Well, a fence is not
Yeah, go
considered a building permit.
Yes, but I think what also does the trick is the last condition relating to covenant registered on title to prohibit any future development. And so it gives you gives you a list of things to list.
Okay, one of the things, if I can make a comment, was we did a borehole of lot 12, 13, 14 in the retained land. From that we put this in lot 13. There. In order to structure a pool, they had to have a geotechnical study done with a borehole sample to identify it as whether it's stable or not, and it is stable. Staff has a report from going on that, so that would have to go through the building permit process.
So committee, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read the first motion, and once again, the conditions, and then I won't read the conditions for the following motions. I'll just read the title if that's okay. Okay, I have a motion by Les Goldhawk, seconded by Ned McEwen, that consent B-0723 be granted subject to the following conditions. Condition 1, of course, I've read this already, that a drainage assessment on the severed parcel be reapportioned according to the agreement signed by their respective property owners and provided by the town. If the parties cannot mutually agree, the apportionment, or if the town does not approve, the applicant shall pay the engineering fees incurred by the engineer selected by the town. The fees will be paid prior to the stamping of the deeds. Number 2, that a copy of the deed and survey must be submitted to the secretary treasurer in a form suitable for registration. Number 3, that such additional severance fees as required by the town have been paid before the documents will be endorsed. Number 4, that the conditions be met and the survey and deed be presented within 2 years from the date of the decision, or the consent will lapse. Number 5, that a new grading certificates be required to demonstrate compliance and that site servicing continues to be on the correct lot. And this number 6, this is where the change is, folks. That the applicant obtain a minor variance or a setback to a water course as if a building permit is also required. That makes sense?
I think it does.
Okay. Okay. Number 7, that the severed lands be merged on title through section 50 brackets 3 of the Planning Act, and that the hazard lands be rezoned or conveyed registered on title to prohibit any future development, i.e. no garden sheds, pool sheds, hard surfaces such as patios or decks. So for the first application, B-0723, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. So I will move to consent, I'll move to B-0423. Once again, I have a motion by Jennifer Turk, seconded by Nettie McEwen, that consent B-0423 be granted subject to the following conditions, and the same conditions that were mentioned in the last application, or the last conditions. At this time, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Now I have once again, a motion by Nettie McEwen, seconded by Les Goldhawk, that consent B-0323 be granted subject to the following conditions. Once again, those conditions are the same. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. And lastly, I have a motion by Nettie McEwen, seconded by Les Goldhawk, that consent B-0223 be granted subject to the following conditions. Those are the same conditions that we had mentioned before. Call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. And as you heard, Carl, there is a 20-day appeal period. And once again, you'll be in contact with Isabella. And she can let you know when that appeal period is up. And if you have any questions, you can go through her.
Thank you.
Any questions? Perfect. All right, let's move on. I think I went backwards again with all those, didn't I? I started. Yep. Yeah. Kind of went backwards again. Not doing very good here. Sorry, committee. On those days. At this time, we'll move on to business arising from the previous minutes and the OACA conference review. I know, Nettie, you were going to give us a wholehearted presentation, PowerPoint and whatever. We just like the abridged version, if you wouldn't mind. Was there any?
Abridged version, all
Thank
right.
you very much. I'd like to know what you've learned when you were there on the behalf of our planning
Yeah.
committee and as well as our town.
The next conference I go to, we have a different chair, so they don't ask me to give a report.
That could easily be done.
Anyway, yeah, I went to several of the yeah, what do you call them?
Sessions.
Seconds.
Yeah, sessions and I will rhyme them off to you what I went to. The legislative, got trouble like you,
Mhm.
legislative changes to Bill 23. That was helpful, but I just heard the lawyer's point of view and
Yeah.
wasn't the same as my point of view. But anyway.
Not that hard to believe.
Yeah. Anyway, you know, we did learn more homes are going to be built faster and third-party appeals are no longer possible for approval of minor variances and consents. But
You can keep talking. It seems like it's really hard. You might as well take your time.
so now you're gonna get a bigger version because it's
Perfect.
raining so hard.
Yeah.
So Bill 276 of the Planning Act was a good refresher, but again, interpretation from a lawyer with the Ontario real estate. So I don't know whether we agreed with them or not. So the policy changes to the Planning Act related to control of division of land. Then there's Ontario Farm Diversified Uses. It's clear the province wants housing. So I suppose we're not gonna see much agricultural land one of these days. It's ridiculous. Then we have Ask an Expert. That was another lawyer
Are you
edition.
leading that one?
I wanted to. They didn't ask.
No.
This was a session where a lawyer only sat and answered a bunch of questions and sort of, I don't know if my eyes slammed shut at that time or not. Didn't get a lot of information out of that one. And then there was supposed to be another session of Conservation Authorities Acts, but it ended up just being talking about the 4 tests. So, yeah. Did we learn a lot? I'm not too sure whether we did learn a lot, but it was a lot of fun too.
Good.
So, and it was excellent food. Very wonderful accommodations, you know, our room like perfect sight of both falls. And you could even open your door, so you heard the water, you know, like they had bars in front of the open.
couldn't
window,
jump?
so- No, I wasn't even tempted, actually. Tonight I might have been tempted. But anyway, no, it was really fantastic conference. It was sold out too. It was
Fantastic. That's
Oh.
good. Was that the first in person since?
I think so. Yeah.
COVID? Great.
So yeah, it was really good. Was that adequate, sir?
Fabulous. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Just wondering if you had the opportunity to talk to other communities, the other folks from communities similar to
Yeah.
ours.
Yes.
And that's where I find I
They-
learn.
Yeah, and they had opinions too.
Other than, yeah,
And also the St. Clair, you know.
Right.
Yeah, we talked to that one too. That was Carly Burns.
Yeah.
So, and she used to work here. So, yeah. Yeah, it was really good. Yeah. And we sort of sat and we were rumbling about, you know, certain minor variances. And this one lady was sitting there, she knew what we were talking about. We almost ignored her completely, the poor woman, but she understood entirely. She understood what we were discussing, and so she was sort of interested too.
Great.
Anyway, so we weren't completely ourselves.
Great, thanks, Nettie. Jennifer, I know you went, I don't know, I know we went on behalf of another, but anything that you'd like to add, to Nettie's?
I don't have anything to add because we were in the same session.
All the same
Oh,
sessions.
yeah, we all went the same one,
You guys all sit beside each other and stuff,
Yes.
hold hands. That's good.
kept each other away.
That's good. Obviously, that's good. Thank you. Thank you very much for your report. Appreciate it. Any other old business, Isabella?
Not at this time.
Okay, we'll move on to new business. So once again, I always start out with our new business and the reasoning for any of our decisions. We made one decision tonight that was against what our planner had become, so we need to come up with reasoning behind that. So I'm asking our committee to share with Isabella. Isabella, do you have anything there that we've that you heard from us, why it was the reasoning that we went against our planner's suggestion? Or
I noted, talk about, land that was, using land that is, if land is available, not, withholding it from building if it meets, the necessary requirements.
anything else from the committee?
No, just, I think I mentioned, I think you're covering it there, that not to stagnate an existing residential lot. That's all I,
Anything to add, Les?
Well, I think a couple of the things that I was bringing up was the St. Clair Conservation Authority, approval for it, plus the shoreline protection that they had put in to extend the setback, which was shown on their diagram. Both of those, I felt was considered.
Okay. Great, thank you. Any other new business? This time I'll ask Isabella first. Any new business that we have or that you have?
Not at this time.
Okay, I'll go through our committee. Jennifer, any new business? Les? Nettie?
no, sir.
Anything from our planners? Anything, Corinne? Perfect. Well, I just happen to have a motion here. Hopefully I can read this one properly tonight. I got a motion by Jennifer Turk, seconded by Nettie McEwen, that the Committee of Adjustments meeting be adjourned and the next meeting be scheduled for August the 8th, 2023 at 5:15 p.m. From what I'm hearing from Isabella, that we have at least 2 severances and 2 variances, if I'm not mistaken, so at least 4 for that night. So all those in favor? That is carried.